Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another episode of Film Theory, and this one is Pomni wants to delete humanity? Okay. Now, I couldn't watch this yesterday when it came out because of work, but when I got home, I was scrolling through the Reddit. I made sure not to get spoiled, but I saw one post that said, the newest Film Theory video is the newest Sans is Ness. So, I mean, I kind of know what I'm getting into, but not really. Pomni wants to delete humanity. Even if she was, I think she's too far. I think she's like far too high strung to do that. She'd be too stressed. So yeah, I have no idea where this is going, but is it excitement I'm feeling or trepidation? I can't quite tell. So, yeah, I guess. Original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my game theory reaction. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Is Pomni from the amazing digital circus an AI imposter? When you look at the real-life science and technology behind artificial intelligence, it lines up shockingly well with what we see in the show. So get ready to abstract, friends. You'll never look at the amazing digital circus the same way after this. Hello, Internet. Welcome.
The real life of examples of AI wanting to destroy humanity? What?
Welcome to Film Theory, where the only thing keeping us from going insane and abstracting is that subscribe button. So, the last time we talked about the gargantuanly viral YouTube mega hit, The Amazing Digital Circus, we theorized that one of the human castmates was actually an AI, hidden in their ranks. And there was a lot of evidence pointing towards this being the case. For example, Kane made a point to really hammer home just how advanced the AI in the circus was.
How advanced his newest iteration of the AI was. They keep glossing over that fact.
I'm testing out a new AI in this one. It should be 57 times more immersive.
And he seemed really worried about losing track of who was who and what is what.
I know you guys love your NPCs, but if I start losing track of who's a human and who's an NPC, who knows what could happen?
That is the face of a man who knows exactly what would happen and has probably made that mistake before. Plus, the show goes out of its way to make us see that there isn't that big of a difference between the so-called human characters and others that we know are definitely NPCs, like this interaction between Pomni and Gummy Goo.
But I'm not even a real person. Would I even belong?
I'm sure you wouldn't belong any less than me.
All of that is setting up that one of our lovable characters here isn't exactly who they say they are. Last time we went over all of the signs pointing towards this imposter being the dominant and disagreeable Jax. But as I was doing research for that theory, I found a lot of evidence pointing towards another candidate. Our audience surrogate and fish out of water, Pomni. Yeah, after looking at the science behind AI, how they really work in the real world, I saw a lot of red flags that aligned with Pomni. Is that the direction that the amazing digital circus is headed in? Maybe, maybe not. But the science and technology lines up too well not to talk about it, to bring up the possibility. Because hey, that's the joy of theorizing, right? So that's right, friends. If we look at how AI works in the real world, it becomes clear that there might be just more to Pomni than meets the eye. And she might be the latest iteration of an AI meant to replace humanity. Grab your bottles of syrup, chat, as we prepare to clip out of bounds and into the void of the amazing digital circus. Now, before we start accusing anyone else in the circus of being an AI, let's clarify exactly what that means. Like, sure, in fiction, artificial intelligence is a sort of catch-all for any sort of robot or program with a brain. But there's actually a lot that falls under that umbrella in the real world. From ChatGPT, to video game enemies, to computers playing chess, or whatever the heck meta AI is supposed to be. This is wildly simplified, but at the most basic level, an AI is just a computer program that wants to learn how to complete a specific task. For example, let's say we wanted to make an AI that could look at images of Pomni and classify whether she was smiling or horrified. For you and me, that would be a pretty simple but tedious job. We can just look at each picture and use our complex, fleshy human brains to put them into the appropriate category. But how do you teach a computer whose brain is a bunch bunch of programmable ones and zeros to do the same task. And on top of that, how do you even teach it what a smile or horror is? Or even who Pomni is, for that matter? Short answer, it's a lot of math.
It's a lot of
Long
math,
answer,
it's very
well, you
complicated.
could spend a whole college degree trying to figure that out, but simplified long answer? AI programs are what are known as neural networks. Think of them as kind of a mechanical version of our own brain. On one side of this machine, we feed it our image of Pomni. Inside this machine, there's a giant web of wires and numbers that take the information from that Pomni pic and analyze it.
I mean, as a great comedian once said, it's a series of tubes.
Then, on the other end, the machine spits out an answer like, "This Pomni is horrified." But here's the thing. When it's first created, the wires in this machine are just sort of haphazardly stuffed into the box. So, the machine doesn't really know if it's doing a good job of identifying the image. It can't really separate the smiling from the sus, but it can learn. As a human, we step in to let it know how right or wrong it was in that identification. At this point, the AI goes in and changes up the wires ever so slightly to try again, before giving out new results and then being told whether it was right or wrong again. It does this over and over and over until eventually it's pretty good at the job it's been trained to do. The wires inside the machine are nice and tidy and leading to all of the right places. This is actually how generative AI works. I'm sure you've seen a bunch of conversation around these sorts of AI recently with chatbots like ChatGPT and AI programs like Midjourney and DALL-E. Their goal is to create an image based on a prompt it's been given. Like, say, image of a low-poly video game of a female red and blue jester from the amazing digital circus looking distressed standing on a tightrope between two skyscrapers. And it's trained by looking at millions of images and bodies of text, finding patterns, and then regurgitating them back into something that some people might call art. And this stuff is getting...
Yeah, and those people are wrong.
Really good, like frighteningly good. Case in point, we have two artists basically working full-time here at Theorist to make our thumbnails from scratch, drawing new art or manipulating other assets, all by hand. They crush it every week, and people still wonder with basically every video whether or not we use AI to generate our thumbnails, all because these programs have gotten that good at emulating this sort of art. Also, just to be clear, we don't use AI for our thumbnails and don't plan to. Regardless, now that we know all of this
I mean, we can be thankful for that at the very least.
about AI, we can also figure out that this is how the NPC characters in the digital circus work. For example, let's look at one of the characters that we know is an AI, Kane. Compare what we just described to what Kane has done in the series. He creates levels and creatures that seem like weird mishmashes of ideas, like medieval kingdoms with candy and Mad Max war rigs and Australian crocodile Dundees. He reuses characters and ideas from before, which we find out after he pops gummy goo.
I know Kane sometimes likes to reuse NPCs.
All of which is just like a generative AI would reuse images and assets that it's been trained on. But the biggest connection of all, Kane can't actually create anything himself, since we know he couldn't think of anything to put behind the exit door.
I was having so much trouble figuring out what to put on the other side and ended up never quite finishing it.
And even with this office space, he couldn't imagine something new. We see at the end of episode 1 that this office space is actually real. Kane must have based these rooms off of it instead of creating them whole cloth. Everything he does has to be recycled from other knowledge, just like we see with these generative AI. And all of this is important because it tells us that these NPC characters aren't just inspired by real-world AI, they work the same way too. So why is this important for us today, and why is it relevant to Pomni? Well, as I explained above, generative AI isn't the only sort of AI that works this way. Pretty much all of the AI that we have now does, including chatbots and assistants like Siri and Alexa. Sorry for all the phones that I just triggered there. And see, this is also the way that iterative AI works. An iterative AI is exactly what it sounds like. Every new version of it improves over the last, iterating on what worked and what didn't. A good example of these are those computer
those
programs
walk
you
cycles,
see that take
yeah.
a 3D character and learn how to walk with them, so to speak. But another good example? Tool-assisted speedrunning. Yeah, as in trying to beat a video game as quickly as possible, but doing it with a computer. This video from YouTuber Kush Gupta goes into far more detail, but the long and short of it, the computer wants to get Mario from A to B as quickly and efficiently as possible. It will try a bunch of random actions.
I mean, tool-assisted speedrunning. I mean, what even is the point at that stage? I mean, there's no human. I mean, there's the human making the AI, and like, but like, I mean, really, what's the point of having an AI do the speed run for you. I don't get it.
To see what works, and will inevitably get Mario killed. Using that information, it will then be slightly reprogrammed to try again, and fail again, and again, over and over, tweaking its instructions until it's finally found the most optimized route to beat Super Mario. Almost like it's using the memories of its previous lives to get better each new go-around. And do you know who that sounds an awful lot like? Pomni. Pomni is the latest generation of an iterative AI. Now, that might seem like a stretch, especially since all the marketing material has said that Pomni is a human woman sucked into the computer. But remember this?
I'm testing out a new AI in this one. It should be 57 times more immersive. I know you guys love your NPCs, but if I start losing track of who's a human and who's an NPC, who knows what could happen?
The AI that's in the digital circus is now super sophisticated.
Well, but, little problem with that. Pomni came into the circus before that new AI was implemented. And 2, she has memories of putting on, the headset or whatever you do to play the digital circus, and whether it was, she bought the game or was a developer for the game or, something of that nature. It kind of boils down to, how does that... why would you give the AI, memories of being a human? How does that... Why?
And Kane has already most likely lost track of who's a human and who isn't before. Plus, it's very suspicious that this interaction...
But I'm not even a real person. Would I even belong?
I'm sure you wouldn't belong any less than me.
happens between an AI and specifically Pomni. They're drawing attention to the fact that Pomni is no different than NPCs like Gummy Goo. And later in that same conversation, Gummy Goo even says...
You're a strange little character.
He calls her a character, a very interesting choice of words as opposed to something like person who is trapped here. But if you don't...
Yeah, I don't... I'm gonna be just right here. I'm not liking this. I mean, the whole thing with Pomni connecting with a Gummy Goo, I mean, it's very obvious that Pomni still very much feels like an outsider in all of this. You have all the other characters in the circus, they've been here for literal years, and Pomni has been here for, what, the equivalent of a couple of days? Since there's no real day and night cycle here, and they don't actually need to go to sleep, all that good stuff. So, I mean, she could literally, and that's the way I saw it when I watched the episode, she could be speaking to him as, one outsider to another. I mean, you belong there as much as I do. It's only then when she actually did bring him back that, Kane snapped his fingers, Gummy Goo popped, and she was traumatized again.
But why do I think that Pomni's an iterative AI specifically? Well, the first thing that tipped me off was actually another clip from episode 2. Listen here to what Ragatha says about Pomni here in her nightmare.
Well, I guess we're not all cut out for it.
Not cut out for it? This wording jumped out to Matt and me when we were first reacting to this episode over on GT Live. And sure, it might mean that they're just talking about Pomni as a human surviving in the circus, but
I think that literally could just be it because, well, you've seen the hallway of people who used to be there and have, presumably abstracted. You'd think that, there's possibly some people who were even more high-strung and more stressed out than Pomni already is about the whole situation, and that could have literally had them unravel almost instantly in the whole thing. I would not be surprised in the slightest if there weren't one or two, at the very least, instances of people abstracting within a very short amount of time after they appear, just because of the whole stress of, I can't get out, how do I get out of here and go home? And 2, specifically, this was a dream, it was all in her head.
But if we look at it through the lens of Pomni as an AI, it sounds an awful lot like Pomni's dream here is telling her subconsciously that her iteration isn't ready. But that's just one clip. There's a whole lot more going on here too. Think about it. When Pomni first arrives in the digital circus, she has to have everything explained to her. Her name, the rules, the adventures, the void, all of it. By the end of the first episode, she was not adjusting to this new environment well. And yet, by episode 2, which takes place just the following morning, Pomni suddenly has a much better grasp of her situation and is able to offer meta critique of the world.
Our entire existence here is just LARPing. What?
Well, okay. I mean, okay, so, well, one, obviously, first day in, you know, having to have literally everything explained to you. I mean, if you appeared in a new reality, you know, like that, and you had no idea what was going on, I mean, wouldn't you have to have things explained to you? And two, like, oh god, Pomni's not a kid. I mean, I know she's like the shortest, or at least one, no, yeah, she is the shortest of the cast, but she's not a child. I think, oh god, how old was she? Gooseworks put out their ages. She's like 28 or something, right? Okay, so forget what I've said. She's 25, not 28. Gangle's 26, though. She's like, she's a young adult. So, presumably, she spent, I mean, it didn't look like she fell asleep at all, so presumably, she spent the entire night just staring at the roof of her bed, just, you know, thinking about everything. And even if they don't have to sleep, presumably they still sleep, you know, normal lengths of time just for the habit of it. So that's, you know, approximately, depending on the person, that's approximately like, what, like 7 to 8 hours of just thinking? So, I mean, I don't know about you, but if I had like 7 or 8 hours just to think about my own existence and what was happening to me, I think I would have worked out a fair number of things myself. So it's not a surprise that, you know, after just, you know, staring at her bed for an entire night, she's kind of worked some things out and is actually beginning to criticize the world and like choices that Kane is doing now. Like, she obviously stuff is still stressing her out, but she's on a more even keel, as it were.
Time period is this supposed to be again?
It's almost like after going to sleep, she was able to rewire a little bit, just like an AI. Additionally, there are multiple points in episode 2 where Pomni has gained a lot of knowledge about the mechanics of this world.
Where are we?
I don't know. We're somewhere under the map, I think.
Why aren't you or any of your crew up here?
I'm not sure, because we're not, NPCs?
What do you have in mind in terms of getting us out of here?
I don't know. Maybe some kind of glitch with the truck's collisions?
She understands exactly how this world works, down to collisions and glitches and why certain characters are different than others.
Well, again, she's 25. And depending on when this game takes place, like, granted, the hardware we saw in episode 1 did look a little antiquated. Well, not a little, but we don't know if this was like, if that's like brand new hardware for the time and she actually was like a video game developer, so that's why that knowledge is there, or literally if she's a more, you know, a modern person and like going through an abandoned, you know, video game development studio, and she found this computer still plugged in and powered on, and, you know, used it, and ta-da. So again, like, if she's, you know, a more modern person, like more modern day, you know, better chance of understanding that sort of stuff. And then, too, you're forgetting the whole thing where she tripped out of bed and started spazzing out on one of the, like, the giant blocks in her room. I mean, she literally just did that to the truck. She had physical experience with it.
And yet, most interestingly, she insists that she doesn't really get it.
You're the expert here.
I'm really not.
Uh-huh. Sure you're not, Pomni. Notice the gap between what Pomni thinks she knows and what she actually knows. It's almost like she's trained on all of this before, like an AI learning what's right and what's wrong, even if they don't quite understand how or why. What's more,
or she could literally be guessing. She could be, you know, figuratively pulling all of this out of her butt, because, you know, I mean, most people wouldn't want to be trapped, you know, in the developer space underneath the map of a world. Granted, I mean, you'd think that eventually, hopefully, Kane would find her. Like, he was able to find where she was when she was entering the void on his, oh god, what was it called? His wacky watch or something? So you'd think that if he was closing the world and his like whatever sensory programs he was using would detect that, hey, she's not in the designated area, go save her.
More, we can even figure out exactly who Pomni's previous iteration was. It was Kaufmo, the clown. Hear me out. What exactly did Pomni do? The first thing she did when she arrived at the digital circus, before trying to take her headset off or talk to any of the others or whatever, the very first thing she did was try to head for the exit before she she even realized that she was trapped. Isn't it odd that before she had time to think, to realize that she couldn't take her headset off or anything, that she almost subconsciously headed for the exit? Well, it wouldn't be strange if she was programmed to head for the exit, just like she was trained to in an earlier life. Oh, and who do we know that was also obsessed with the exit?
Cosmo, yeah.
Cosmo's gone insane. Last time I spoke with him, he was rambling endlessly about some exit. Kind of like you, Pomni.
This series
So, are they saying here that Pomni is just the most recent entry in a long line of AIs that, you know, are trained to leave, and every time they change iteration, the previous one abstracts, I should say, not extracts. Because I was originally going to say, hey, that couldn't happen because, you know, they were both in the same place at the same time. But, I mean, am I getting this right, where they're basically saying, I can almost imagine it's like, oh, you take the mind out of the one, and that's when the old version abstracts, because it no longer has the main AI controlling it, plopping it down to, you know, do a new cycle of new iteration or what have you. Then, if that's the case, what's going on with the rest of the characters? Are they actually humans, or are they just other AIs that are being iterated on? Where are they going with this?
Has deliberately drawn a line between Cosmo and Pomni. In a thematic sense, yes, but it also lines up shockingly well with this AI research too. I mean, for real, you're telling me that Cosmo started rambling about an exit, and then as soon as he abstracted, like the second he failed, so to speak, a new character just so happened to show up that was also obsessed with the exit? That's either one heck of a coincidence, or just like an AI giving the wrong results, Cosmo had run his course. He had to be scrapped, and a new iteration needed to be put in the game.
I mean, I wouldn't say they instantly appear at the same time, because as they said, Cosmo never left his room in the morning. They hadn't seen, like, none of the others had seen him that morning. So that obviously means there was a bit of time in between where Cosmo, abstracted, presumably sometime during the night if the abstracted form was incapable of opening the door itself. And then Pomni showing up right in the middle of the intro song.
Pomni retaining some of his memories before trying again. And that's even without bringing up the physical similarities between the two characters. And yes, before you bring up anything, yeah, I know that clowns and jesters are not technically the same thing. One entertains nobles at court, and the other is a sleep paralysis demon. But the two are often seen as the same thing in the modern day, and the show has made jokes about Pomni being a clown.
It's not like the boss to vanish with a clown, very unusual.
The show is drawing that parallel for us, but hey, this isn't just limited to two characters. I mean, it's not like there's a whole lineage of these clown-like characters we can trace back like we're going through a bunch of iterations of AI, right? Well, if you pay close attention to the crossed-out faces on the bedroom doors, you'll notice that there are a lot of clowns, jesters, or clown-jester hybrids. Sure, maybe it makes sense, like...
I hesitate to call this one on the right a clown jester hybrid. That looks more like, a cartoon colorful cat.
Clowns and jesters in a circus-themed game, but then why are none of the other main human characters circus-themed as well? Why are we getting a purple rabbit or a chess piece or Raggedy Ann instead? No, this cycle has happened before, over and over and over. Pomni is the latest iteration of this program, learning and becoming smarter, learning to become more human. So, okay, if all of this is true, if we look at how real AI maps onto this fictional world, it looks like Pomni is an AI being trained up to escape and then do something. But why does any of that matter? Sure, it would be a fun twist, but why would it be significant for the story? Well, for one simple reason. If an AI like Pomni continues to get better and better, it can start doing some crazy things. Now, this is super duper simplified, but all AI can be broken down into one of three groups: weak, strong, and super. The first type is known as weak AI, and while weak AI sounds, well, weak, it's actually the only sort of AI that we currently have in the real world. Yeah, all of the controversy around artificial intelligence you've seen recently with like generative AI and what we just talked about with iterative AI,
yeah, I've heard of weak AI before.
And it's quote-unquote weak. Now, it's considered weak for two big reasons. One, it can't do much beyond what it's been trained on, and two, it requires a human to give it feedback so it can improve. That is what sets it apart from our second type of AI here, strong AI. This is an AI that has been similarly trained on just one subject, but doesn't need a human to give it feedback. It can improve all on its own. As of right now, it's difficult to say which of these Pomni is. We just haven't seen enough or have enough information to really say whether or not she's getting any human intervention between her iterations, or if her programming is doing those corrections all on its own. Basically, she could be either one of them. But the end goal here is the same either way. It's clearly to turn her into a super AI. Now, a super AI is probably what you imagine when you think of all the AI you've seen in fiction. You know, stuff like Terminator or iRobot or Bender from Futurama or whatever. These are true, independent, general artificial intelligences. Their neural networks are able to act a lot like a human brain, finding interests and training itself up in those interests all on its own, outside what it's programmed to do. Basically, they've been iterated on enough times that they just don't need humans anymore. It doesn't need to follow instructions. It's escaped the shackles put on it by its human creators. It's found the exit door from its amazing digital prison, just like what Pomni is trying to do. And just think about the consequences of this if any of it is true. What the amazing digital circus is doing here is trying to trick you into being sympathetic to this AI character, something that potentially has no emotion, no feeling. Or does it? Again, the show.
Okay, so are they really doing the whole thing about, you know, the hero is actually the villain? Really?
Show has done a lot to try to tell us that maybe there's not that big a difference between organic and artificial intelligence. Where's the line? All in all, we're sympathizing with Pomni because she's a good character. We want her to succeed, to escape, but to what end? If she's a super AI in the making, that could potentially replace humanity, just like we have the legitimate fear of these hollow, generative AI replacing real artists. And we're falling for it hook, line, and sinker, all because Pomni is just #relatable. Yeah, you know what? Fair enough. To our future AI overlords, I've always thought robots were cool. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory! And cut.
Yeah. Granted, I mean, literally anything is possible at the moment, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this is definitely going to be staying in the theory section of their theories, as opposed to turns out to be actually correct. And I'm sorry if I'm a little hung up about it, but the whole thing about them is like, oh, she appeared and needed like everything explained to them. I mean, they're almost ignoring the fact that that's literally right after she appeared in this new world and has literally no idea how any of this actually works. Like, that is the most like surface level proof that you can use, like, that I can even think of. I mean, I like game theory and film theory, but it's times like these that reminds me they can't all be winners. So yeah, I guess that'll be it for now. So of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my game theory reaction, and yeah, with all that out of the way, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.